All right, let's talk about something I think a lot of us can relate to, getting stuck in the same old relationship patterns. Today, we're diving into a really cool guide from a retired clinical psychologist, Dr. Lasater. His big idea: treat your dating history like you're a scientist doing field research. Actually analyze the data to figure out what truly works for you and what really doesn't. Okay, let's get into it.
Does this sound familiar? You meet someone, it's exciting, it's new, but then, somehow, you find yourself in the exact same kind of dynamic, hitting the same frustrations, and heading toward the same ending. It's this exhausting cycle, right? And it can make you wonder if you're ever going to get it right. Dr. Lasater has this perfect way of putting it. He says we're all out there doing relationship field research. But here's the catch. Most of us never actually stop to look at the results. We just keep collecting more data, more dates, more relationships, without ever taking a moment to figure out the lessons we're supposed to be learning.
But let's take a step back and remember why we're even doing this. The whole point is connection, right? Partnership. I love this quote from Mark Twain. To get the full value of joy, you must have someone to divide it with. And that's the goal here, to get you closer to that joy, but with a lot more intention and a whole lot less guesswork.
So how do we actually break this cycle? Well, Dr. Lasater gives us a surprisingly simple framework to make sense of our past. And don't worry, this isn't some complex psychological deep dive. It's a really practical tool that you can start using, right now.
So the heart of this whole thing is what he calls the personality spectrum. It just puts people on a simple scale from low-key on one side to high-strung on the other. And this isn't about judging anyone as good or bad. It's just a way to understand the different kinds of energy people bring into a relationship.
Let's break that down a bit. So low-key people, they tend to be more peaceful, more stable. The vibe is just lower intensity. High-strung folks, on the other hand, bring that high intensity, a lot of passion, which can sometimes, lead to more conflict. The most important thing to remember is that neither one is better. The whole secret is finding the mix that works for you. Now, this is where the tool really comes to life, when you actually apply it to your own history. So let's look at a couple of real-world examples from Dr. Lasater's work. You'll see how this super simple spectrum can uncover some pretty profound, life-changing patterns.
First up, let's talk about Amber. After she did this analysis, her big realization was something that I think might hit home for a lot of people. She said, I recognize how I've connected with men who've never really grown up. She had this pattern of dating guys who were a lot of fun, super charismatic, but ultimately pretty immature.
So let's look at our data. Amber herself is high-strung. And you can see the pattern here, right? She kept dating other high-strung men. The football player in college, her ex-husband. And yeah, that intensity was probably exciting at first. She rated her satisfaction a 7, but it always ended badly. The final one was a total disaster, just a 2 out of 10, because the party just never stopped.
You see, by charting it out like this, the pattern just became impossible to ignore. That fun she kept chasing was always tied to an immaturity that, as an adult, she just couldn't deal with anymore. This little exercise literally cured her of that pattern. Her takeaway wasn't just a vague feeling, it was a clear, data-driven decision to find someone mature and stable.
Okay, now let's look at Nicholas. He had a totally different kind of aha moment. He's a high-powered lawyer, and his big conclusion was that what he really needed was someone who could be a relaxing, nurturing presence in his life.
And when you look at his chart, it makes perfect sense. Nicholas is very high-strung, and look at his history. It's filled with other intense, high-strung professionals. He was basically just recreating the high-stress environment of his job in his home life. And the result? A bunch of relationships that were passionate for sure, but totally unsustainable.
So, the big insight for Nicholas was that he didn't need someone who matched his intensity, he needed someone who could balance it. He needed a low-key partner to help create that peaceful home he was craving after a long week at work. It's a perfect example of how knowing yourself can change everything.
Okay, so seeing how this worked for Amber and Nicholas is one thing. But the real game changer is when you apply it to your own life. So now it's your turn. Let's walk through exactly how you can do your own analysis. And it's really just 3 simple steps. First, you gotta be honest with yourself. Where do you fall on the spectrum? More low-key or more high-strung? Second, make a chart just like the ones we saw. List your most significant partners, classify their type, and then rate your overall satisfaction on a scale from 0 to 10. And finally, step 3, just look at the data. What patterns do you see? What combinations consistently gave you the highest satisfaction? Now, the whole point of this isn't just to dig up the past. It's about building an incredible tool for your future. It's what Dr. Lasater calls your relationship radar.
Because once you do this work, you're not just flying blind in the dating world anymore. You're not just crossing your fingers and hoping you stumble into the right person. Instead, you're making choices that are guided by actual self-knowledge. Your heart is still in charge, of course, but now it's backed up by the wisdom of your own lived experience.
So, let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. First, analyzing your past really clarifies things and helps you focus your search. Second, that self-knowledge is what builds your personal relationship radar. Third, and this one's huge, you can stop endlessly collecting field research. Once you see the pattern, you know. And finally, yeah, it does take a little discipline to stick with what you've learned. But that discipline is what leads to way, way better choices.
And that really just leaves us with one final, very important question. Once you do this analysis, once you have this clarity on what you truly need and want in a partner, are you ready to stop experimenting and finally, truly focus your search?